A single mom, fired for helping a stranger minutes after closing time, finds herself at rock bottom. Until that same stranger turns out to be Elon Musk. But was it chance or fate? The neon sign above the McDonald's on Franklin Avenue buzzed, faintly casting a tired yellow glow across the rain-slick parking lot in Modesto, California. Inside, the hum of the soda machine had become background noise to Kendra Moore's second-nature rhythm. Wipe table, toss tray, smile at the door, repeat. It was nearly 11:05 p.m. and officially past closing. The crew had already locked the doors, shut down the fryer, and one of the teens in the back was sneakily scrolling on his phone. But Kendra wasn't done. Not really. She never was. Her daughter, Amara, had fallen asleep on a worn vinyl booth in the corner with her geometry textbook still open on her lap. The 12-year-old had insisted on staying up to study, "In case you get off early, Mom." Early was never a word Kendra got to use. She glanced over at Amara, taking in her little girl's small frame curled under her oversized hoodie, the same one Kendra had found at Goodwill last winter. There was always pride mixed in with the worry. Amara was brilliant, curious, and held together by a will stronger than steel. Kendra's job? Make sure that fire never went out. So when a tall, slightly disheveled man in a hoodie knocked on the glass door just as the light started to dim, Kendra didn't hesitate. "Sorry, we're—" She started as she walked to the door, but something in his eyes stopped her. He looked lost, not the drunk kind of lost, or the wrong exit kind of lost, more like a man running from something invisible. "Kitchen's closed," she said through the glass, voice muffled. "But give me a sec." She didn't wait for him to respond. She unlocked the door and waved him in. "Just a burger, if that's okay," he said. His voice was deeper than she expected, polite but distracted. "You got a preference?" she asked, moving behind the counter. "Griddle's still hot." "Surprise me," he said with a tired smile. She studied him as she worked, graying stubble, dirt under his nails, and that peculiar intensity some men had when their minds were somewhere else entirely. "You passing through town?" she asked, flipping the patty. "Something like that," he said. "Needed to clear my head." Kendra smirked. "Not much to clear it with in Modesto, unless you're into cow pastures and discount liquor stores." He chuckled. "Maybe that's exactly what I needed." She slid the wrapped burger and fries across the counter. No register beeped, no card was swiped. "It's on me," she said. "Just don't tell my manager." That made him pause. "Why?" "Because, technically, you're a ghost. Store's closed, and I just fed a ghost. They don't like ghosts." He looked at her differently then, really looked, like he was trying to place her in some bigger picture. "You always do this?" he asked. "Help people you don't know?" She leaned on the counter, folding her arms. "Only the ones who look like they forgot how to ask for help." His eyes softened. "Thank you, Kendra," he said, glancing at her name tag. He left soon after. No dramatic goodbye. Just a nod, a quiet good night, and the sound of his car disappearing into the night rain. She didn't think about it again until the next morning. Her manager's voice echoed across the kitchen like a gavel. "You let someone in after hours? Are you out of your mind, Kendra?" Kendra stood her ground, apron still wet from rinsing trays. He was cold, hungry. I wasn't going to turn him away. "I don't care if it was the Pope. That's protocol." "You broke it. You're fired." The word hit like a slap. "Fired just like that. No write-up, no second chance." "Fired!" Kendra didn't cry, not in front of them. Amara was silent on the bus ride home, sensing the tension. At the apartment, bare walls, chipped tile, the stale scent of pipe smoke from next door, Kendra finally sat down. Her hands trembled as she unlocked her prepaid phone and checked her bank balance. 26/14 rent was overdue. Again, she buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking with the weight of everything she'd held up for too long. Why did she help him? 2 days later, there was a knock at her apartment door. Kendra opened it to find a man in a black blazer standing beside a Tesla. "Are you Kendra Moore?" Her stomach flipped. "Who's asking?" The man handed her a crisp envelope. No name, no return address. Inside, a letter embossed with a silver X. You treated a stranger with dignity when you had nothing to gain. I believe we could use people like you. If you're open to it, I'd like to offer you a position. No strings, no catch. E.M. Her pulse pounded. Was this real? A prank? Attached was a number, a contact at SpaceX. Associate Community Outreach Liaison. She didn't even know what that meant. Her thumb hovered over the phone. Then Amara appeared beside her, curious. What's that, Mom? Kendra looked down at the letter, then at her daughter, the reason she worked double shifts, skipped meals, and smiled through exhaustion. She didn't know how, or why, or if she could believe this was real. But then again, what if it was? She dialed the number. The voice on the other end picked up instantly. Ms. Moore, we've been expecting your call. The air shifted around her, electric with possibilities. But who exactly had she served that night? And what did they really want from her? The voice on the line was calm but crisp, with the polished cadence of someone used to authority. Kendra froze, still holding the phone to her ear in the doorway of her tiny apartment. Behind her, the faded wallpaper and the buzz of an aging fridge stood in stark contrast to the surreal conversation beginning to unfold. "I'm sorry, who exactly are you?" she asked, voice guarded. "This is Natalie Chang. I'm part of the executive operations team at SpaceX. Mr. Musk mentioned you personally. He asked that I reach out to offer you a position on a new initiative launching from our Hawthorne facility." Kendra blinked. Wait, Mr. Musk, as in Elon Musk? "Yes, ma'am." A long pause followed. The name sank like a stone in her stomach. Her legs moved on autopilot as she drifted to the couch and sat down, slowly, as if the floor might drop out beneath her. The couch spring sighed under her weight. "You sure you've got the right Kendra Moore?" she asked quietly. There was a small laugh on the other end. He was very specific. Kendra's mind flashed to that man, the tired eyes, the hoodie, pulled low, the faint smell of engine grease clinging to his clothes. He hadn't looked like the billionaire plastered on magazine covers and business blogs. He hadn't acted like him either, just a man, wandering the night, searching for something. "And this job offer?" she asked, her voice tight with suspicion. "I'm not an engineer. I barely passed high school physics. You wouldn't be expected to build rockets," Natalie said, her tone lightening slightly. "The role is called Associate Community Outreach Liaison. You'd be working closely with our education initiatives, specifically programs that engage underrepresented youth in STEM. We're piloting a new program to identify talent in overlooked communities. Mr. Musk believes you have something valuable to bring to the team." Kendra's breath caught in her throat. She looked over at Amara, who was now pretending not to listen from behind her textbook, though her eyes flicked over the page without comprehension. I don't even know what to say," Kendra whispered. "Say you'll come to Los Angeles," Natalie said. "We'll handle the flight, housing, everything. You'll be met at the airport. If you accept, you'll start next week." Kendra felt the room shift again. The phone, the couch, even the ground beneath her suddenly seemed unreal, like props in a dream she hadn't asked for. "But I don't have anyone to watch my daughter. She comes with you. We've already accounted for it. There's a school. Placement waiting, too." The silence between them stretched. "I'll send the official offer and travel itinerary to your email," Natalie continued. "You'll have 72 hours to confirm. No pressure. But just so you know, he doesn't do this often." The call ended. Kendra sat there long after the line went dead, the quiet humming around her louder than anything Natalie had said. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay in bed, eyes tracing the cracks in the ceiling like they were road maps to some other life. Could she really do this? Move to Los Angeles? Work for SpaceX? Every voice of doubt she'd ever heard echoed through her mind. "You're just a waitress. You're a single mom. You don't belong in rooms like that." But another voice, softer, quieter, pushed back. "Why not you?" She glanced at the clock. 3:12 a.m. Her shift would have started in 4 hours, but there was no shift anymore. no paycheck, no stability. Only a burning bridge and the strange opportunity that rose up from its ashes. The next day, she picked. Amara up from school early. The girl looked surprised. "What's going on?" "We need to talk," Kendra said. At home, over lukewarm mac and cheese, she laid everything out. The man at McDonald's, the firing, the phone call, the offer. Amara's eyes grew wider with each word. "Wait, Elon Musk gave you a job?" Kendra chuckled dryly. "Apparently." "That's insane. What do you do at a place like SpaceX?" "I have no idea," she admitted. "But it's something about helping kids like you." Amara grew quiet. Her fork toyed with her food. "So, we'd leave Modesto?" "Yeah, baby, we'd have to." Another long pause, then, "I think we should go." Kendra blinked. "Really? You'd want to?" Amara looked up. "Mom, you always talk about getting out of here. Maybe this is how." There it was. Permission from the person who mattered most. 3 days later, they were on a plane for the first time in their lives. The roar of the engines, the tilt of the earth below, it all felt unreal. Kendra held Amara's hand the whole way, white-knuckled and wide-eyed. At LAX, a sleek black car met them at the gate. The driver, a clean-cut young man with the build of a security guard, opened the back door with a small nod. "Ms. Moore, we'll take you directly to the residence." Residence? Company. Provided housing. The drive through Los Angeles was a blur of lights, palm trees, and lives too fast for her to imagine belonging to. When they pulled into a quiet street tucked just beyond the main drag in Hawthorne, the car stopped in front of a small but modern apartment complex. White walls, glass balconies, a tiny courtyard with succulents. Kendra walked through the front door like someone stepping into another person's life. Hardwood floors, stainless steel appliances, no mildew, no neighbors fighting through paper-thin walls. Amara explored every room, letting out little gasps. "Mom, there's a dishwasher." Kendra laughed for the first time in days, but the next. "Morning!" Reality came crashing back. She stood in front of a sleek mirrored elevator in the main SpaceX building, wearing the only business casual outfit she owned, a fitted navy blouse and gray slacks she'd borrowed from her neighbor back in Modesto. The lobby had felt like a movie set, high ceilings, glass walls, workers walking fast with coffee in one hand and tablets in the other. She felt like a fraud, like at any moment someone would tap her shoulder and say, "Sorry, you don't belong here." The elevator dinged. She stepped inside, heart hammering. When the doors opened again, Natalie was there, clipboard in hand. "Kendra." "Welcome?" "Hi," Kendra said, swallowing nerves. "This way." They walked through glass-walled offices, sleek conference rooms with holographic projections, and into a quieter wing with a sign that read, STEM Initiative Division. Natalie gestured toward a desk near the window, then pulled out a chair. "This is your workspace. You'll be helping coordinate outreach events, organize mentor visits, and serve as a community liaison. You'll work with schools, parents, and kids. We've got a few pilot cities lined up, Compton, Oakland, Fresno." Kendra touched the desk. Her name was already on a small placard. How did Mr. Musk even know to offer me this?" she asked. Natalie's expression shifted. She hesitated. Then, "He said you reminded him what it meant to be human." Before Kendra could respond, a voice rang out from behind her. "I see you made it." She turned, and there he was, hoodie, jeans, eyes just as tired and focused as she remembered. "Elon Musk." He nodded once. "Glad you didn't let protocol get in the way." Kendra stood frozen. What do you say to the richest man in the world after accidentally saving his night? But he spoke first. "Let's talk. There's more I haven't told you." The hallway fell unnaturally silent after Elon's words. Kendra blinked, unsure whether to follow him or wait for someone to tell her this was all part of some elaborate onboarding ritual. But no one said anything. Natalie gave her a discreet nod. "Go with him." Elon was already halfway down the corridor, walking at a surprisingly fast clip. Kendra had to hustle to keep up. her heels clicking against the polished concrete floor as they wove past glass offices and conference rooms. "I wanted to speak with you personally," he said, without turning his head, his voice even, like he was discussing weather patterns and not upending her entire existence. "What you did, most people wouldn't have," Kendra swallowed, trying to match his pace. "It didn't feel like a big deal, just a burger." He glanced at her sideways, a hint of a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Kindness rarely feels big in the moment, but it echoes. They stopped at a small meeting room, minimalist, quiet, and starkly empty except for a table and 2 chairs. Elon gestured for her to sit. As she lowered herself into the chair, hands nervously folding in her lap, he leaned against the edge of the table, arms crossed. "I've seen the insides of more corporate restaurants than I care to admit. I used to sleep in a rented office and shower at the Y. That night in Modesto, I didn't want to be recognized. I needed anonymity. I needed to feel invisible." Kendra didn't respond immediately. She was still trying to reconcile this version of Elon Musk, the one who looked like he'd borrowed clothes from a thrift store and talked like therapy had taught him to breathe, with the mogul plastered across business networks. "And you gave me that," he continued. "You didn't ask for anything. You didn't judge. You just offered grace, and then lost your job for it." Kendra met his gaze. "I don't regret it." "I know," he said simply. "That's why you're here." She leaned forward, slightly. "But why this job? Why me? You could have given me a check and gone back to Mars or whatever." He smiled. "Because money would have been temporary. What you did, how you think, it's rare. And this initiative, we're not just hiring skills, we're hiring integrity." He tapped the table gently with his fingers, a rhythmic drumming. "There's something else, too." Kendra's body tensed. "I didn't end up in Modesto by accident. I was scouting." "Scouting what?" He hesitated. "Talent. Places where people are forgotten. Where brilliance doesn't get noticed because it doesn't come wrapped in prestige." Kendra frowned. "So I was part of an experiment?" "No. But maybe a test," he admitted, "to see if the right kind of people still existed out there." "That sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel," she muttered. He shrugged. "Welcome to SpaceX." Silence settled between them. Kendra looked down at her hands, feeling the weight of it all settle in her chest. This wasn't just a job. This was some sort of unspoken mission. "Can I really do this?" she asked, voice low, raw. Elon straightened. "I don't make bets I don't believe in." Then, just like that, he pushed off the table and headed for the door. Before leaving, he paused. "One more thing. There are people who won't like that you're here. They'll think you jumped the line, that you don't belong. Ignore them. We didn't bring you in to fit in." Kendra nodded slowly, her throat tight. He disappeared down the hall. The next few days unfolded like a fever dream. Orientation sessions, project briefings, team introductions. Everything moved fast. SpaceX didn't operate on a normal clock. Deadlines blurred. Schedules bled into weekends. Everyone spoke in acronyms and code names and referenced tech Kendra had only ever heard in Marvel movies. But despite the overwhelm, Kendra stayed rooted. Every time she felt like she was sinking, she'd remember Amara's face when they'd landed in L.A., full of awe and possibility. That alone was fuel. Still, Elon's warning proved prophetic. It started subtly. A woman from HR who accidentally forgot to add Kendra to a team email. A tech lead who corrected her in front of a group, then later admitted she'd been right. Passive-aggressive remarks about how diversity hires were changing the company culture. One afternoon, Kendra entered the conference room for a STEM planning session and heard the tail end of a conversation she wasn't meant to hear. I mean, seriously, she was flipping burgers last week. Now she's in charge of outreach strategy? Yeah, I don't get it either. Guess serving Elon a Big Mac makes you executive material now. Laughter. Kendra stopped short in the doorway. Her stomach twisted, and for a split second she considered walking away. pretending she hadn't heard, but something inside her snapped. She stepped into the room, eyes locked on the two men who'd been speaking. The laughter died immediately. "Glad I could provide some entertainment," she said, voice calm, steely. "But if you'd like to take over outreach, be my guest. I've got a 12-year-old who already understands mentorship better than either of you." She sat at the head of the table, not waiting for a response. The rest of the team trickled in, sensing the tension. The two men stayed silent for the entire meeting. Afterward, one of the interns, a young Latina named Rosa, caught up to her in the hallway. "I heard what you said," Rosa whispered. "Thank you." Kendra managed a tired smile. "Don't thank me yet. We've still got work to do." Back at the apartment that night, Kendra cooked while Amara worked on homework at the kitchen counter. The space smelled of garlic and herbs. Kendra's attempt to recreate the only dish her mother had ever taught her, red beans and rice. "Some girl at school said I was only there because of your job," Amara said suddenly. Kendra paused at the stove. "What did you say?" "I said maybe her mom should have worked harder." Kendra turned, stifling a laugh. "Amara," she was being mean. "I know." Kendra knelt beside her daughter. "But sometimes being strong isn't about fighting back. It's about showing them you're not afraid to be here." Amara nodded slowly. "I'm not." Kendra tucked a curl behind her daughter's ear. "Good, because we're just getting started." But as the night wore on, a new unease began to creep in. Natalie had sent a message earlier that evening. "Elon wants to see you tomorrow. One-on-one. It's important." No reason, no agenda. Just that. Kendra stared at the message long after Amara had gone to bed. What now? The next morning was unusually cold for Los Angeles. Low clouds clung to the horizon, and a chill hung in the air like a warning. Kendra stood in front of her closet, staring at the limited wardrobe she'd brought from Modesto. She reached for the navy blouse again, hesitated, then grabbed the simple black dress she'd been saving for something important, though she'd never known what that might be. She pulled her locks back into a neat bun, slid on a pair of small silver hoops, and checked herself in the mirror. Not for vanity, just to see if the woman staring back still looked like someone who belonged in this new life. She didn't. Not today. Still, she squared her shoulders and left. Amara was already on the school shuttle, her goodbye a sleepy mumble, and a thumbs up through the van window. Kendra watched until the vehicle disappeared around the corner. Then she turned to face whatever Elon Musk had to say to her. The SpaceX campus was unusually quiet when she arrived. The lobby, usually buzzing with motion, felt still. The receptionist smiled and waved her through without a badge. No questions, no sign-in, just, "He's waiting for you on the 3rd floor, last office on the right." The elevator ride felt longer than usual. The digital numbers blinked as she ascended, each floor bringing new layers of doubt. By the time the doors opened, her heart was pounding. She walked down the hallway, each footstep soft on the gray carpet. At the end, a glass office door stood slightly ajar. A placard read, "Elon Musk." She pushed it open. He was at his desk, alone, backlit by a wall of windows that looked out over the sprawl of the city. Los Angeles stretched out like a living map, full of contradictions, opportunity and decay, glitter and grit. "Come in," he said without turning around. Kendra stepped inside, the door clicking softly behind her. She remained standing. "You wanted to see me?" Elon turned slowly, his expression unreadable. Today, he looked more like the billionaire she'd seen in the media, clean-shaven, sharp suit, eyes sharp and distant. "I need to ask you something," he said. "And I need the truth." Kendra braced herself. "Okay. We're about to announce a major expansion to the outreach program. A national rollout, press, partnerships, federal funding, all of it. It's going to be big. And it's going to get attention." She nodded, unsure where this was going. He stood and walked toward her, slow, deliberate. "Some people in the upper ranks think you're a liability, a wild card. They think bringing you in sends the wrong message." Kendra felt her jaw tighten. "Because I don't come from the right school, Or because I'm a single mom from Modesto who used to work a fryer? Because you didn't go through the system, he said plainly. They think you haven't earned it. She folded her arms. Didn't I? I know you did, he replied, but that doesn't stop the politics. She inhaled slowly, steadying her voice. So what are you saying, Elon? You brought me here just to send me back? No, he said. I'm saying it's about to get harder. A reporter's been sniffing around, digging into your background. Your finances, your firing, everything. That hit like a punch to the chest. Why? Because someone leaked your hiring to the press, framed it as a publicity stunt, a way to make the company look good after some internal complaints about diversity hiring quotas. Kendra's hands clenched. Her voice dropped low. So I'm your redemption story, he met her gaze. No, you're the reason we don't need one. She stared at him, the fight in her rising. I didn't ask to be a symbol. I didn't ask for any of this. I just gave a man a damn burger. He nodded once. And that's why this matters. Look, when the story drops, they'll question your qualifications. They'll question my judgment. What I need to know is this. Are you going to fold when that happens? Or are you going to make them regret doubting you? She didn't hesitate. I'm not going anywhere. A long silence. Then, for the first time since she entered, Elon smiled. Just a little. Good. Because I need you to speak at the launch. Event next week. Kendra's heart stopped. What? You'll be on stage. With me. With the Secretary of Education. We're announcing the rollout to 10 cities. I want you to tell your story. Unfiltered. She shook her head, stunned. I've never done anything like that. Then it's time to start. He returned to his desk, already moving on to something else. You'll meet with media coaches. Natalie will prep your talking points. But make it yours. That's the whole point. As she turned to leave, he added, And Kendra? She looked back. Don't apologize for where you came from. That's what makes you dangerous. The rest of the day was a blur. Meetings, interviews, fitting sessions for the press event. People who had once side-eyed her now offered polite smiles, cautious approval. But Kendra didn't mistake politeness for respect. That had to be earned. That evening, back at the apartment, Amara was waiting on the couch, scrolling through TikTok. Did you see this? She asked, holding up her phone. You're on Twitter. Kendra took the phone. A headline stared back at her. Elon Musk hires ex-McDonald's worker for executive role at SpaceX. Bold move or PR ploy? Her stomach turned. She scrolled down. The comments were brutal. Nepotism at its finest. Next, she'll be launching rockets with a Happy Meal. This is what happens when woke culture runs companies. She tossed the phone on the couch and walked into the kitchen, trying to focus on dinner. Amara followed. Don't listen to them, Mom. I'm not, she said, though her voice cracked. Yes, you are. Kendra stopped, turned to face her daughter. What if they're right? What if I'm just here because it looks good? Amara's eyes were steady. They're not. I know who you are, and if they can't see it, that's their problem. Kendra pulled her daughter into a hug, burying her face in Amara's hair. I just don't want you to ever feel like you don't belong. I don't, Amara whispered, because you're here. That night, Kendra sat at her tiny desk staring at a blank page. A speech, her story, her chance to flip the script. But with every word she tried to write, doubt crept in. Who was she to stand beside billionaires and speak about anything? Just then, her email pinged. It was from Rosa, the young intern. Subject, thought you might like this attached. A scanned letter from a school in Oakland. Kendra opened the PDF. It was a handwritten note from a 7th grade girl named Tamika. I didn't think someone like me could ever work at a place like this. But now I want to, thanks to you. Kendra stared at the letter, heart swelling. She reached for her pen, and this time the words began to come. But miles away, in a dark office, a different conversation was unfolding. A senior board member leaned over a phone, whispering to someone on the other end of the line. Yeah, she's going to speak next week. Musk's really pushing her forward. A pause. Find something, anything. I want her off that stage. The morning of the launch event arrived like a storm, breaking over glass. The sun had barely touched the skyline when Kendra stepped out onto the rooftop terrace of her temporary apartment. Clutching a cup of black coffee she wasn't sure her stomach could handle. Below, the city shimmered under a blanket of mist. From this height, everything looked quiet, still. But inside her chest, a war had started. The dress they'd given her hung neatly inside the closet. Deep plum, sleeveless, structured, expensive. She'd never worn anything that cost more than her week's rent. The speech she'd rehearsed was folded in her bag, marked with creases from nervous hands. Her words had taken 2 weeks to build, each sentence carved out of doubt, trimmed with hope. She wasn't trying to impress the media. She wasn't performing. For executives. This was for the girl in Oakland, for the kid in Modesto, for Amara. But as the wind picked up across the rooftop and her fingers trembled against the coffee cup, she realized something else. She was terrified. She wasn't just telling her story, she was defending it. The SpaceX event was already buzzing. By the time she arrived, a massive stage had been erected in the central courtyard. White paneling, a tall LED backdrop flashing images of rockets, kids in classrooms, blueprints, stars. Rows of chairs stretched outward in clean, calculated rows. The crowd was already gathering: reporters, educators, engineers, politicians. The Secretary of Education was on site, flanked by aides. Elon wasn't visible yet, but his presence was unmistakable. People moved with the urgency of those who knew eyes were watching. Kendra stepped out of the town car, heels clicking against the pavement. As she walked toward the prep area, she caught the flash of cameras already pointed in her direction. One reporter murmured to another, "That's her, the McDonald's lady." She kept walking. Natalie met her backstage, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning every detail. "You good?" Natalie asked, gaze flicking up from her notes. Kendra nodded, though she wasn't sure it was true. "They moved you to the second slot right after Elon's opener," Natalie said, lowering her voice. "He insisted. That surprised her. I thought I'd go last." "End strong." He said, "Your story is the opening. People need to hear why we're doing this before they hear what we're doing." Kendra took a breath. "Okay." Natalie reached out, squeezing her hand briefly. "You're gonna kill it." But just as she turned to leave, her earpiece crackled. Then her face changed. Kendra caught it immediately. "What?" Natalie hesitated. "What?" "There's something." Kendra's stomach dropped. Natalie leaned in, voice low and tight. "There's been a leak." "What kind of leak?" Natalie swallowed. "An anonymous tip, alleging that you lied about your employment history and that you were involved in a theft incident at a past job." Kendra went cold. "That's a lie." "I know. Elon knows, but the media doesn't." Her thoughts spiraled. Who would do this? Who would dig that deep and twist it like that? Natalie continued, voice rushing now. Elon's team is working to suppress the story before it breaks. But there's a chance, small but real. It'll hit social media before you speak. Kendra stepped back, breath quickening. "You're saying I might walk onto that stage and be humiliated in front of the world?" "No. I'm saying you have a choice." Kendra stared at her. "You can step back," Natalie said softly. "We'll regroup, do damage control. Have someone else speak, someone internal, vetted." "And let them win?" Natalie didn't answer. Kendra turned away, facing the stage curtain. The hum of the crowd beyond it was growing. Somewhere in the audience was Amara, sitting with Rosa, and a handful of kids from the pilot schools waiting to see her, waiting to see what someone like them could become. She clenched her jaw. "No," she said. "I'm not stepping back. Kendra, I'm not letting someone else write my story. Not this time." She pulled the speech from her bag and handed it to Natalie. "I don't need this anymore." Natalie's eyes widened. "You're going off script?" Kendra nodded. "They want real? I'll give them real." Moments later, Elon took the stage to a standing ovation. He spoke with his usual blend of futurism and clarity about innovation, exploration, and the need to invest in minds beyond zip codes and GPAs. Then, without preamble, he said, "There's someone you need to hear from, someone whose story reminded me why we build, why we push boundaries. Please welcome Kendra Moore." Applause erupted. Kendra stepped out, lights blinding, cameras clicking like distant thunder. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Her palms were slick, but her voice, when she began, was steady. "I was a waitress in Modesto," she said, "at a McDonald's off Franklin Avenue. I worked late nights. I folded kids' meals. I cleaned up after people who didn't bother to look me in the eye. And I did it with pride because I had a daughter to raise and I wasn't about to let the world break her spirit." Silence. Deep and charged. One night, a man came in after hours. He was tired, hungry. Looked like life had been chasing him down. I made him a burger, no questions, no judgments. I didn't know it then, but that man was Elon Musk. Murmurs, audible gasps. I lost my job for it. A pause. But that act of kindness gave me this opportunity, and I stand here today, not as a charity case, not as a symbol, but as proof. Proof that brilliance doesn't come in one shape, that grit doesn't wear a name tag, that sometimes all someone needs is a door opened, just a crack, to change everything. She scanned the crowd, locking eyes with Amara, whose face was lit up like it might burst from pride. "They tried to bury me," she continued, "with whispers, with lies. But what they forgot is, when you bury a seed, it grows." Applause. Thundered. I didn't come from privilege. I didn't come from connections. But I came with something that can't be faked. Integrity. And now I'm here to make sure that every kid who feels unseen knows this. You matter. You belong. And your future is yours to claim. She stepped back, heart racing, tears in her eyes. The applause didn't stop. She caught sight of Elon off stage. He nodded, no words, just the quiet affirmation of someone who knew she had just won a war. But in a private office on the other side of the compound, the same board member from before stood with a phone in hand. She went off script, he muttered. The crowd ate it up. The voice on the other end was sharp. "Then we need to hit her harder. Quietly." A pause. "We're not done with Kendra Moore." Kendra didn't sleep that night. After the speech, after the interviews, after the cameras stopped clicking, and the crowd melted away, the adrenaline drained from her body like water slipping through a cracked vessel. Alone in her apartment, curled on the edge of the couch, still in her dress, she watched the city shimmer in quiet twilight. The media had already crowned her a breakout figure of the event. Twitter was on fire. Headlines cycled through the same beats: single mom to SpaceX leader, the Kendra Moore story, grit and grace, the heart behind SpaceX's new outreach program, the speech that silenced critics. Kendra Moore just changed the game. But she knew better than to think it was over. Fame was fickle. Attention was sharp-edged. And somewhere, in some closed room, people with power and paper trails were deciding how to clip her wings. Still, something had shifted. The fear was still there, yes, but it didn't rule her anymore. The following morning, she met Natalie outside the cafeteria, both of them running on fumes and cheap coffee. Speech went viral, Natalie said, handing her a breakfast burrito and a phone loaded with unread texts. 3 million views overnight. Kendra took the burrito, but her appetite hadn't returned. "Doesn't mean they won't come for me." "They already are," Natalie admitted. The background check story leaked at 2 a.m. Kendra's chest tightened. And it didn't stick. Turns out the theft incident they tried to pin on you? Natalie pulled out a tablet and tapped it. Wrong Kendra Moore. Different. Middle name. Different birth date. Someone didn't do their homework. Kendra blinked. They used a false report to try to get rid of me. Yep. She sat down heavily on a bench outside the engineering wing. The sky above was clean and bright, a crisp blue that felt almost cruel given the sleepless night she'd just lived through. Natalie looked at her. "You want to sue?" Kendra shook her head. "No, I want to outlast them." She did more than outlast. Over the next 3 months, the STEM outreach program exploded. Kendra oversaw launches in 9 cities, bringing workshops, mentorship programs, and scholarship pipelines into places long ignored: Flint, Jackson, East St. Louis, and yes, back in Modesto. She stood in front of gymnasiums filled with brown and black children and told them the truth, that it didn't matter where they started. What mattered was that they kept going, and people listened: parents, teachers, lawmakers, CEOs. Something about Kendra's voice, the plainness of it, the fire beneath it, cut through the usual noise. Amara thrived too. The school near the SpaceX campus had embraced her, and for the first time, she came home talking about coding and robotics instead of cliques and cafeteria drama. She joined a weekend mentorship circle for girls in STEM and began sketching spaceship designs in her notebooks instead of fashion doodles. One afternoon, Kendra found a page titled Project Orion by Amara Moore. Underneath, "In case Mom lets me go to Mars one day." Kendra stared at the drawing for a long time, her throat tight with something between pride and disbelief. But not everything went smoothly. The board member, the one who had said, "We're not done with Kendra Moore," wasn't finished. He made quiet moves behind the scenes, lobbying to redirect funding from Kendra's division, attempting to force a merger with a more traditional educational contractor. His reasoning: efficiency, stability, predictability. The real reason was simpler: control. Kendra learned about it when Rosa came to her late one evening, white-knuckling a folder she wasn't supposed to have. "They're trying to phase." "You out," she said, voice shaking. "Phase the whole program out, rebrand it, put it under their thumb." Kendra didn't flinch. "How long do we have?" "Vote goes down at the board meeting next week." Elon hadn't been present much since the launch event. He was deep into a Mars propulsion project and had essentially gone off-grid. No texts, no meetings, no way to reach him directly. But the night before the board vote, Kendra stood outside the glass elevator on the executive floor, holding a single envelope in her hand. It was a letter. Not an email, not a speech. Just her truth. A plea, a challenge, a reminder. She handed it to Elon's assistant. "Please," she said, "just make sure he reads it." The assistant nodded. "I will." The boardroom was sharp-edged and cold the following morning. 12 seats. 12 votes. Kendra was given 10 minutes to make her case before stepping out into the hall. She didn't beg. She didn't bluff. She told the truth. Again, she spoke of the kids she'd met, the breakthroughs they'd had, the parents who cried at seeing their children dream out loud for the first time. She spoke of Amara, of Oakland, of Modesto. Then she left the room and waited. When the door opened 20 minutes later, Elon stepped out first. He looked at her, unreadable as always. Then he nodded. "We're expanding to 20 cities," he said. "Budget tripled." Kendra let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "And the board member?" she asked, resigned. Elon paused, then added, "It was overdue." Kendra didn't ask how he'd convinced the board. She knew he'd read the letter. That evening, Kendra walked with Amara along the quiet sidewalk outside their apartment. The stars were out, clear and defiant above the smog. Amara skipped ahead, humming to herself, arms out like airplane wings. "Hey," Kendra called, "want to get ice cream?" Amara spun around. "Really?" Kendra smiled. "Yeah, really. We've earned it." They crossed the street together, hand in hand, into the corner shop where a sleepy teenager behind the counter served them 2 scoops each, mint chip for Amara, pistachio for Kendra. They sat outside on the curb, legs swinging, cones dripping, under the street lamp's glow. "So," Amara asked through a mouthful of mint, "what's next?" Kendra looked up at the sky. "Whatever we want," she said, and for the first time in her life, she meant it.